All right, we are recording. Well, welcome, Charlene. Thanks for joining me so I'm not here alone in my room. Why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself and where you are from?
I'm Charlene Kruger from the Claremont Monthly Meeting in Claremont, California, although originally from Philadelphia Yearly Meeting, and traveled through San Diego and La Jolla to get here. I've been involved in religious education since my beginnings with friends as a teen worker in the baby room, and have done teaching and children's meeting activities until I would say maybe the last 20 years. But up until then was really pretty active.
Wow.
But our kids, we don't know how to accommodate them. They're zoomed out.
Yeah.
And there's occasionally two of the young teen girls will get on for a couple of minutes after meeting for worship, because I'm the host and I leave the room open after the adults are done and say any kids who want to hop in do, and sometimes they will, most often not. I know that some other meetings are doing that, and they very graciously invited our kids to join their kids, but it's just not happening.
Yeah. Thank you. Thanks for providing some context for your interest too. Charlene, I want to just ask, can you hear me okay? It's a little bit fuzzy on here. I'm hearing you with a little bit of background noise and fuzz.
Do you still hear that?
Not as much. Not as much. Okay,
I
good.
unplugged the computer. I think it's a internal fan thing that's going on.
Oh, okay.
Thank
All
you.
right. And you can hear me all right?
Yes, I can hear you well.
Okay. All right. Well, I'll introduce myself. Thank you. I'm Melinda Wenner Bradley. I'm a member of Westchester Meeting in Philadelphia Yearly Meeting. And I grew up as a Quaker kid in Millville Meeting, which is in Upper Susquehanna, so north of Lehigh Valley, where you began, in that part of our yearly meeting. And I currently serve Philadelphia Yearly Meeting as the Youth Religious Life Coordinator, and so have care of both our youth programs that the yearly meeting hosts, and also supporting the religious ed programs that are happening in local meetings as well. Um, and I want to make sure before we end our conversation today, Charlene, that you also know about, you may already know about, the Quaker Religious Education Collaborative, QREC, which is a grassroots network. It's existed for about the last 6 years, and it is a network of people who do religious education for children, youth, through adults. And I can put, I think I can put things in the chat box to you. I think everything now is you and me. And so I'll see if I can find the QREC website to put in the chat box for you. It is a source of a lot of resources. I was one of the founders of it, which is why I brought it up because the whole idea was not to be recreating the wheel across our yearly meetings, but where we could be sharing resources and ideas with each other. So I just put it in the chat box. I hope you can see yeah, it's pretty simple, Quaker Collaborative.org. It's Quaker RE Collaborative.org. Great. So we are here to talk about sort of what the last year has been like and some thoughts on that. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen and start this slideshow. Um, I don't love that when I start a slideshow, I can't see you as well, but I'm going to go ahead and do that. Actually, I think I'm all right. Can you see the slide?
Yes, clearly.
This is beautiful artwork. I have to give a shout out to Ann Needham, who is a member of Wellesley Friends Meeting and New England Yearly Meeting. It's one of her beautiful pieces of art that I thought really spoke to, for those of us with a care for families and children and youth, the idea of all being together. I thought of that as like the Zoom airwaves going out from them. So, what has our experiential learning been in the last year? I took a whole bunch of notes and then put them here on the slide. And I was thinking about the fact that, like a labyrinth, it's like there are times we felt like we were getting closer to where we wanted to be, and at times we felt pretty far away from where we wanted to be. Um, so for me, these have been my experiential learnings. The idea of staying tethered to families and young people was vital. Families have, and I'm going to say things that we all know, we know are true. Families have really had a hard time during this period. A lot of families were moving into having to work and help with school online and being home all together all the time. So trying to find ways to stay connected felt really important. It was also true in my experience, and I'm really thinking about the yearly meeting as well as my own meeting, that not all meetings had the capacity to pivot online for worship and for RE programs. I encountered meetings where they did move worship online, but maybe or just did not know how to or weren't sure to or just felt that it wasn't the right thing to do to move their religious ed online. And there are lots of reasons for that, all very valid. um, Zoom fatigue, you already lifted this up, a lot of Zoom fatigue. And also that online programming did not meet the needs of everyone. I had a family in my own meeting say to me, the kids don't want to come to Zoom children's meeting because they feel like it's too much like school. And it was true when I thought about it. I was like, well, if the converse was true and we were back in person and they walked into the room for them at meeting and it was full of desks and, desks and chairs and rows, that wouldn't feel right either. So, really recognizing it did not meet everyone's needs, both with the online fatigue and just how it feels. It was true that creating online youth safety guidelines was important. And there was a lot of really kind of cool collaboration that happened on this. Britain Yearly Meeting was sort of a step or two ahead of us here in the United States a lot of the time. So I went and used their online safety guidelines to create the ones for Philadelphia Yearly Meeting. And then yearly meetings here, some of our staff share things with each other so that we were connecting around this. I know for us in Philadelphia Yearly Meeting, one of the things that was important was that in the same way that when that parents and guardians know when their young person is in a program because they dropped them off at the meeting house like your parents dropped you off, it was important that when we sent out the Zoom links for online programs, even for our middle school and high school students, that their parents also received that information so that their parents knew where they were when they were in an online program. Communication is critical to nurturing community when you're trying to stay tethered in online and offline with each other. I've sent a weekly email to the families in our meeting, and even the people who were not joining us were getting that weekly email. And I tried to do things for my meeting. If we had a particular children's story, I would try to send a YouTube link to a read along or a video of the story so that if somebody chose to do something else on Sunday morning with their family, they could still connect in asynchronously to what we had done that week with it as well. And it was actually kind of cool to watch. There were new communities that formed in online spaces. Watching meetings talk about multi-generational fellowship. I don't know if your meeting did any game nights or scavenger hunts, but taking advantage where we can of Zoom allowing us to do that, the way we did earlier this morning with the scavenger hunt that we were sent off to do by Kai. In Philadelphia Yearly Meeting, again, I'm taking advantage of the yearly meeting structure. We've offered what we call Giant Children's Meeting once a month. It happens on the fourth Sundays of every month and is a religious education program for anyone who wants to join from across the yearly meeting. I'd say that there are about, I think there are 50 meetings at this point who have either their RE person has registered or they've urged families to register. And there are 30 or 40 families who get together, and it's kind of rebuilt a sense of family community across the year. It's also very short. It's 30 minutes, maybe 40. It has a rhythm every time. Things change. It's about, we do something for just a few minutes and change. We share at the beginning. We have a story. We sing. We have some worship after the story. We sing, and then we go on our way. We actually always hold our hands around our Zoom screens when we say goodbye to each other. So it's been a routine. And then at one point, we also tried for our teenagers. I thought, I live with three teenagers, and they don't want to get up on Sunday morning and go to meeting. So we've offered in Philadelphia Yearly Meeting a Sunday evening, just youth led worship, and allowed the youth to be the ones. We always have two adults there, but they're really trying to stay as much in the background as possible. They're the Zoom hosts. And the youth have care of meeting. They welcome everyone and end worship. So it's just half an hour on Sunday evenings. I can twist my own children's arms into that too, my house. Um, in New York Yearly Meeting, again, other communities who formed because we've been able to be in online spaces. New York Yearly Meeting did a beautiful project with parent support groups that gathered people from across, actually more than one country, as well as across the country. They set it up and people joined. Family devotionals have happened, and story times that have brought people together again across time zones and places, and offered something that families could go to connect. FGC has had year-round programs for youth for the first time. And I will also say the Quaker RE Collaborative has a Facebook group. I don't know if you're on Facebook, but Valiant Together is a group where there's a lot of resource and idea sharing and support. So, and then in addition to that, meetings have found creative ways to stay connected that are in it, like outside of online programming. So porch visits from a safe distance being masked, dropping off care packages, making phone calls, sending cards and letters. I know somebody who gets on Zoom and has lunch with the children in her meeting, like once a week. So I found that for my meeting, dropping off care packages was really pretty wonderful. I don't know if you all did that. We can talk some more about that, but it was really cool to just. I was saying at some point that I now have memorized how to get to everybody's house, which feels like a cool accomplishment in a meeting community. So, and I just want to lift things up. I reflected a little bit on what's been uncovered by this time when we have struggled with the capacity and the limits of being online. It feels a little bit like we've uncovered that focusing just on Sunday morning and the idea that, well, they'll come to you if you have a thing, is not the only model for spiritual formation. And maybe there's a lesson for us to move outside that box when we can get out of our Zoom boxes. Supporting spiritual nurture at home is vital. Parents don't always feel they have those tools, but there's a lot where parents have been at home and we've had the opportunity to share some things that spiritual nurture is happening always in the home. How can we support parents in that? I wonder a lot about planning for the future, in the future, that centers why. Why do we have a youth program? Why do we have religious education? Why do we do this together? We know we're going to have those answers, and if we answer those questions, maybe it will reveal and reshape a little bit how we do it. It can help us think a little bit beyond the ways we've done them in the past. Creating synchronous and asynchronous programs supports flexibility and hybrid possibilities. We've already had some families and some meeting folks in Philadelphia say to me, but you're going to continue Giant Children's Meeting in the fall, even when yeah, right. I was, and I really thought it was going to be like a September to December. I thought it was just a few month experiment, but of course COVID kept changing, and so then it became a whole school year, and we're going to end in May. But people are already asking me, and I think it's because it serves families, but it also helps to have it available if a meeting simply doesn't have a first aid program. There's something they can share with families once a month. And I think about people like you have been in your time, in your meetings, that people who are serving first aid programs, if there's a thing you can say to families, this happens on the fourth Sunday of every month, we encourage you to go to it, you can go to worship. And we do it early. We do it at 9 in the morning. so that people could go to worship, whether a parent does this at home and then heads to worship because they have childcare, or you have childcare at meeting, but people can go and the teachers can go to worship too. So we'll see. Um, I've been thinking about asking parents looking at the fall about their comfort levels and what their needs are, and can we really craft what we're doing around what they are comfortable with and would like. And I'll be curious when we shift into discussion. I have found that worshiping, the capacity to worship with all ages online, has helped to kind of reclaim some of the generational connection that we were missing. Grandparents were missing grandchildren, and children were missing grandparents. And even if they didn't stay for long, there was a little bit of being able to see older meeting members and children at meeting online that I think was a little bit of a touchstone for people in that trying to stay tethered and connected. So I'm going to stop there. I've thought of some queries that have to do with, is this a moment that we've now watched everything be interrupted, that we might think differently about moving forward with religious education? But I'm gonna actually stop the slideshow and leave that for now. I feel like I've talked for a while and I'd like us to be able to have some conversation as well. So I'm gonna stop the share for now. So that was some sharing there, and I wonder, Charlene, what that brought up for you, things you want to reflect on, questions, other things you've been up to at your meeting that you would share about.
The question that is foremost for me right now on the spiritual side as opposed to the technical side is, how do we hold on to our core values and beliefs and carry them forward without being tethered to our traditions that are not helpful or that need to change now?
Mm,
And there was an article in Western Friend written by Alison Kierkegaard and Kai, I forget Kai's last name, called about tethering. And I
Hi,
found that really helpful because these are changing times and things. The apple cart has been, turned over now. And it, like the Chinese character, what is it? Disaster is also true, is bad and opportunity. We're in all of that now. And we need to seek the opportunities that have presented themselves. And one of those is remaking how we do things, when we do things, where we do them. It's a revolutionary time now in many ways. And it can be for the Religious Society of Friends a time of refreshing and renewal and relevancy. Maybe this is what offers us our hook in the world, we who don't proselytize, right? We've gotten several people who went to our really kind of sad website, but that connected them to us, and now they worship with us. They're only moderately far away, but I have a feeling that they will not be making the trip. They will continue to worship on Zoom.
Amen to like all of that. Yes, and I have felt this way for like a year, that like we are standing in a liminal, we're in a liminal place, we're standing in a threshold. And I actually have been carrying some anxiety recently, like in our exhaustion, let's not just step through and seek to go back to things the way they were. Let's step through with intention to think about how we do things differently. And that's why, to center that question of why. Well, why? And I took my own medicine. We had an RE planning meeting at my meeting, and I lifted up the question. And this was going into the fall. And our committee sat with that. And I was saying, it's not a challenging question, like, why do we do this? But it's like, as you say, what's at the heart of this? What is it that's in the spirit of this? What is it? What's there at the center? And that's one of the questions I've asked a few times in writing things is, what's at the center and will hold no matter what we do and how we do it? What is at that center? And our committee decided that that moment going into the fall, when all of our children were looking at being online for school, to start school, that community and letting them know how much they are loved and valued in our meeting community, that that was it. And a year ago, I might have been like, before COVID, I would might have been like, well, can we kind of, that doesn't seem as, hefty and religious education content as I might like, but it was exactly where we needed to be. And we crafted, fulsome, but we crafted things that we knew we both could do with young people online. And if a family was choosing not to be with us, that they could asynchronously connect in, that we dropped off, things for them to do at their houses that help them stay connected, that they could mail back. Things like you can get big puzzles that are blank. And we mailed everybody a puzzle piece and had them draw things about themselves and then put the puzzle back together to say, we will be together again. And this is us, right? Um, you can get it on Amazon, although Amazon is evil. And and so yeah, I am you are speaking to my condition, and it's a great it's fun to come somewhere and have a meeting of the minds, like how do we do this. So I'm going to share my screen and put those queries up again, because I actually think
Yes, please.
we probably agree on them. um so these for me were like some of the questions, and there probably are other ones too. So what are we on the verge of discovering or accomplishing? Like, we're in this threshold, what could be, what seemed important before that doesn't feel as important now. Staying tied to Sunday morning, for example. I recently met somebody who said there was a time that her meeting was all families with young children. I sort of amazed by that, but it was decades ago. And they decided, or mostly parents with young children, and they decided that the meeting for worship would be on Sunday at 4, because that was after nap, before dinner. And this meeting is still meeting at 4 o'clock on Sundays, because that was what was established. And I thought, well, that's a beautiful story. But I also thought, why do we? There's no reason we have to have meeting on Sunday at 10:30. So what seemed important to maybe feels less important now that we've had this Zoom and pandemic experience. What was undervalued before that we're valuing more? Where is the abundance in this time as well as the scarcity? What relationships do we need to build or strengthen? What is at the center and will hold no matter how we're executing our plans and doing what we're doing? And what long term changes in the bigger picture would we like to be part of bringing to fruition? Um, and I'm going to just show these two slides to you and go, then stop sharing my screen again. These are 4 articles that I've been collecting. I sort of soak up whatever I can, and often in ecumenical spaces, what people feel like they've learned in the last year. I really loved the second one, had this sentence in it that repeated, when we return, we will all be newcomers. So, how do we attend to the anxiety and the excitement and the newness of being together after a long time apart? The third article is actually about children. There are children and young people who have special needs for whom staying on Zoom is going to make this possible for them to continue being part of the community. Like people who the travel would be impossible otherwise. There are some children and young people that we need to really be thinking about how a hybrid is going to allow our community to really be its full self. And the last one I just thought was great, because you would appreciate this one. It was like, okay, everything has changed. So, how do we promote the well being of people through our faith communities, especially the young and parents? Let's form new habits and routines, because we've been doing it for a year. So, how do we how do we do it on the other side? How do we address the injustices and inequalities in our society as a faith community? Embracing hybrid lives and faith communities and reconnecting the generations. So, in these resources, I actually provided to Ruth Reber, and FGC will make them, Lori and Ruth will make them um, shareable to people. So I'm going to stop sharing that again. So yes, and I carry a big concern for a certain generational group. A friend of mine once said, "Oh, they're second thirds." It's like people in the second third of life. She meant second third of life. So, like 25, 30 to 55 ish. I don't know, in your part of the world in Quakerdom, but in my part of the world, that group of people are less active. And there are, of course, the group of people who are going to bring children with them if someone's bringing children, although there are grandparents who do as well. So, how to really take care of families and people who are parenting. Thinking about pastoral care for children begins with pastoral care for their parents and caregivers. How, as meetings, when I think about stepping through that threshold, what can we change practically speaking that helps it be more accessible to those folks and their children?
In our meeting, 70% of us are over 70. There's a huge gap in that second third of life. And then there are parents with children. That means that we don't have many workhorses in
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm,
and some of us have gotten burnt out
yeah,
and have lost our heart for it.
yeah,
And so that's very difficult for us now.
yeah.
One of the good things that is true about this community, it's very privileged, and a lot of our elders are in residential centers that have offered them tech help to use their computers to get on worship, to make sure they have enough, to provide them with tablets, come in on Sunday morning and set them up on the tablet for worship. Those things have happened because of our privilege.
Yeah.
Very few, some of the parents come, some don't on Zoom. That's a function of they're doing school and they're working on Zoom all week. And I understand the kids just can't stand another minute.
Mm-hmm.
It can't look like school. When we go back and they go back, then what we do on Zoom and what we do in person cannot look like school.
Yeah.
Because they're up to here. So we need to look at different things for that. Someone in the meeting has developed a curriculum that's really built about storytelling and less about lessons. Stories that demonstrate the spices through the lives of Quakers through the years. And she's created a timeline through the children's meeting, which was refurbished during this downtime and has now brilliant colors and lots of wall space and less junk and clutter. So the testimonies are interspersed through the timeline that shows people. And some Quakers. I mean, Martin Luther King is there and some other people. So it's going to be different.
Yes.
And she's an educator and has put an enormous amount of work into the curriculum and also into the physical plan of the classrooms now.
That's wonderful.
I mean, they're going to walk in and go, wow.
That's awesome. Are you all Pacific yearly meeting? What's the yearly meeting? Or
North Pacific yearly meeting.
You are Pacific.
We're Southern California.
Okay,
yeah.
cool.
So we're Southern California quarterly meeting in Pacific.
Okay. All right.
Meeting. Or as FC, as Friends General Conference calls us, PAC-YM, because there's
I know, yes.
YM, so we're PAC-YM now.
Yes, I do type PAC-YM, but I also put PHYM for us. I figure, we have to be fair here.
Yes, we do.
Neither one of us get to be PYM, right?
Appreciate that.
Yes, absolutely. Well, and I really appreciate what you're sharing about that different lens at looking at the program that you're going to go back to. I've been trying for a while. It's sort of to encourage, with some success, that we stop thinking about it as first day school, because for two reasons. One is kids don't want to go to school on Sunday morning. That's, but also I think that there's a little bit of, there's insider Quaker language we're using. I mean, if you've ever had a visitor ask what first day school is, and you say, oh, well, it's Sunday school, but let me explain why we say first day, right? They've glassed over within your first 30 seconds.
Yeah.
So we've adopted what they use in Britain yearly meeting, which is children's meeting. And I think You do too. Great. And oh, wonderful. And I think that it really speaks to the idea, both in sort of shifting the language, but thinking about that children have their own spiritual community together in that programming, whatever it might be. Yeah, and I'm really hopeful that we can, again, as we step through, think about as an experiential faith, how is our religious education or spiritual formation experiential through story. I use godly play and faith and play stories as one of those ways for, and one of the really important questions in those, particularly the stories, the faith and play stories that are ones of witness about people, is to ask that question. I wonder where you are in the story or what part feels like it's about you, and for a girl identifying person in the circle to to say that in a story about John Woolman, she saw herself being a person who reached out to people who were different from her. Like, it just is allows us to sort of cross and see ourselves in the stories of other friends, which I think connects our Quaker identity then, and for children that sense of identity. I also think about and I wonder what your experiences with this have been. I feel pretty strongly about children having the experience of being in worship with us. Not all the time, but to some extent, we've experimented. Well, I'll have to find out what that was, although I think I know. People are like, well, wait a minute, though. You worship in silence. How does that work for children? And among my many responses are, well, adults make noise too. Adults have a hard time sitting still too. But also, if you do it once a month, so the children are invited into that experience of what we do as friends, it maybe can look a little bit different that one time a month. So we don't do this every month in my meeting, but we do it 3 or 4, maybe 5 times a year. We have community worship, and we put some quilts down on the floor in the middle of the meeting house, and a basket of books, a basket of pipe cleaners. Pipe cleaners are so quiet. Crayons and coloring. And we often begin with a story or singing, but then settle into worship for the rest of the 45 minutes with all ages together. And there is wiggling and there is some noise and there is this and that and the other, but I always feel like there's a moment where we kind of downshift and settle. And I think it's so deeply valuable for children to know that they are welcome there, and that that's for them too. And I was just talking to another friend who said if the container was a little more flexible, how would it make it more possible for some people to be in it and to be in community together? So I want to hear what what your thoughts are on that.
Our children come in for the last 5 minutes. The person closing meeting, we try to be sensitive to, there is usually a point where the kids are like, oh, okay, I get it now. And they will settle. And then we can wait. Okay, don't be looking at your watch. All right. Don't look at the watch. Let's feel the room and see what's going on. And that's when we end meeting, when we're together sometimes. But it depends on who closes meeting and who feels comfortable doing that. I've been in meetings where the kids were in for the first 20 minutes, and when they left, the latecomers entered. Yes, we settle again. But yes, when the kids come in, we do settle again. Just a matter of timing. And I discuss that with the parents, just as an advocate, like every 5 years or so. Some meetings do this. What do you think about this? We've remained with the kids come in for the last few minutes. But I've seen people in children's meeting. This is what I did. I wanted them to have an experience of worship in the children's meeting. Was there early and sat down and was in worship as they came in. Come and join me and sit here for a few minutes until everybody gets here. Well, I thought all the kids were here. Then I would start the lesson. I confess was school-like. It was a story and some activities, but it was based around a theme, but it was more schoolish than what I think we can do now. And then when it was time to go into the meeting, let's settle down again, and I will tap your shoulder when you can get in line. maintain your quiet. And then gradually everybody's in line. And then we walk in, and then I was like, chill again. And then I tap you, and quietly you feet. They're still running. Okay. But it helps them develop, I think, a sense of reverence, reading for worship. And also they get some practice. It doesn't always go well. Oh, it does not always go well. There are times it does. And it's awesome.
Yeah, it is. It is. I once had the experience of being in worship somewhere, and the kids came back in at the end, and I clearly heard a voice say, "And now we're all here. Now we're all here." And so, whenever the children are in or come back in, it's become kind of a mantra for me, like, "And now we're all here." So, um, to for children to see themselves as being, as you said, like part of it, and being 5 more minutes, and being welcomed in that space. But also, I think that's what you said is important about in their own children's meeting space, having ways to practice and ways to do that. It also occurred to me the other day, this was like, I couldn't believe it was a brand new thought, but it was. We have some older elementary and middle school young people. And I thought, I wonder if they would like to have care of meeting at some point. Like, I know that some of them really have the capacity to sit in school. I mean, sit in meeting. Actually, I was thinking about some of them go to friends' schools around here where, even the elementary school students are sitting in meeting for worship for 30 minutes at school, which makes you wonder, why don't we ask our children to do more in meeting? But I wonder, I'm going to bring that up to our RE committee and just say, what do you think about with some of the older ones, seeing if they might like to have care of meeting, and just see what they think about that idea. You know, see how that might go with them. They might want to plan a community meeting, like plan the sort of lightly programmed beginning of one. So we'll see. They have their own business meetings sometimes, and their favorite thing to do is to plan coffee hour, often with
Oh,
often with themes like fantasy magical animals. Like, you've never seen a coffee hour like that. That's pretty wild. Troll cupcakes. So, well, listen, I really want to say thank you, Charlene. Thanks for joining me in the room. And
oh, thank you for doing this, Melinda. Great ideas. I've got more resources for us and for the parents.
great. And I will see if I can ask Lori to just send you all of my slides directly, just so you have
Please.
it, because they're all linked, and you can, if anything's of use. So,
That would be great. I would
it
really
was wonderful to meet someone who started their time with friends in Lehigh Valley. Very cool.
say hello to Mary Lou.
I will. I will. All right. I'm going to stop the recording so we can get ready to go back. Thank you very much.